Big Bounce is an early years production. It's an outdoor piece. It's very big, it's colourful. We have 3 acrobats and dozens of big, large, colourful balls. It's extremely playful. It's quite abstract in nature, and the premise of the show is that we have a 30-minute performance, and at the end of that performance it culminates in all of the balls being released into the audience, and the audience get this wonderful further half hour of play with these enormous big colourful balls out in open green space. So it's very free and it's very playful, very big and very colourful. So the story of the Big Bounce it's quite conceptual, it's abstract, it is quite a simple story. It's very visual, there's a lot of imagery in it, and the sort of basic outline of the story that we got from the children is that we have this character who's the shepherd, and he owns all of the balls, and he's trying desperately to keep hold of all the balls and not let anyone play with them. He also has a very instinctive fear of red as well, and doesn't have any red balls in his collection. And his world is kind of turned completely upside down when these 2 girls arrive, and they kind of get him to relax and to play, and they start to play with his balls that he's the keeper of. And he slowly learns to relax and have fun, and he starts to play with them, so it's about friendship as well. And then gradually at the end of the piece they introduce red, and of course he is apprehensive at first, and then eventually decides that red is just as fun a colour to play with as the others. So he overcomes his fear and he makes these friends, and they have a celebration at the end. So that's our sort of very basic outline of the story for the Big Bounce. The piece is being developed in early year settings using an approach called 5x5x5 equals creativity, which is championed by our director Nikki McCretton. And the approach is a very child-led approach to creative play. And the work that we did in schools to create the Big Bounce revolved around us taking in a team of artists. So we took in 2 very talented acrobats, Maya Ailing and Sven Hopla. We took in Andy Baker from Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra to be a live musician. We had Nikki McCretton, and each day we would set up a series of provocations, and each day it was a different provocation. And an example of a provocation might be that we have filled the entire space with beach balls of all different colours. We also had giant clear spheres. We set up different problems, like how to move a giant ball from one end of the school to the other. And then we followed through with those provocations and just went with their ideas. So it's an extremely free approach, but thanks to the talented team that we took in, we managed to generate some really exciting ideas for the children. We documented their ideas, and then a lot of their ideas, most of their ideas, we had too many in fact, have all actually made it into the show. So by using the 5x5x5 approach and by beginning the project in the schools, the performance actually relates to the children's own ideas. So you could say the Big Bounce is actually made with children, for children, and I think that's what's so special about this project.
The show is about, it's about 3 characters, mainly 1 character actually, and he's the shepherd of all these balls. And he has to take care of the balls, and he really don't like when they run away. And then there's 2 other characters, and that's me and the other girl, and we play with him and touches the ball when he don't want us to touch it, and mess it up sometimes for him. And it's a very visual show because it's for children, and we don't speak so much. We make some noises, but there's not so much language, so it's mostly visual with acrobatics and clowning. So what I have enjoyed most of working with this show, The Big Bounce, has been all the balls and be able to play with all of them. And it's a new thing. I've never done a show with balls before, So it's always nice when you work as an acrobat, as a circus performer, then when you get something new to work on, which you haven't done before. So that was really good. And then, that was the best. And I also really like to go inside these big sorbs, the see-through balls, which were inside. And first it was like a little bit scary, but it's actually really fun to be inside of them.
Jen, you need to go on the internet right now.
I'm really enjoying working on the Big Bounce. It's been an interesting project, and it's a lot of hard work. We've devised it in quite a short amount of time, but it's been really great working with so closely with the other artists and with the director to devise this piece. So I found the 5x5x5 process quite interesting. It's not something I'd come across before, although I have done quite a lot of education work. But it was really interesting to have that sort of no boundaries when you're going into a school, and you're really there as, well, my understanding, as a facilitator rather than really to dictate what happened. So it's quite a lot of fun, really, just playing with the kids and discovering what they liked and what worked. It was really interesting to see that actually a lot of the narrative stuff, especially with the much younger children, they weren't so interested in it. We come up against a lot of issues in some of the schools with what they're allowed to do, and it was quite hard, I think, for a lot of the teachers to accept that we were going to just let the kids do what they wanted. It was safe, but that was really, really nice to do. Really nice to do. The show in a sentence. It's a bizarre but playful piece about colours, shapes, pictures, and friendships, essentially. I think I've enjoyed most working on the Big Bounce. I think there's two parts of it. Working so closely with some new artists. I work quite closely with Sven a lot anyway, but really getting to work with other people has been great. But also I've been working a lot with Lynn, who's a fantastic movement artist, and it's been interesting for me developing quite a different and new movement vocabulary so that we kind of gel together, and that's been really fun for me to kind of explore new ways of moving that I maybe was not so comfortable with or wouldn't do without some kind of other person feeding off.
So I've been working on the Big Bounce for a few months now, and it's been a really enjoyable process. Actually, it's been really great working with Nikki and Jenny, and they seem to care about the project a lot. I really like working with Nikki as a director, and her approach of treating kids not as kids as a lot of children's theatre does. That's been really great. So just to more read off their reactions and make the work from that, as opposed to trying to make work as adults for adults and then giving it to children which they don't understand. So it's been a good process. Okay, so talking about the 5x5x5 process and working with that in the schools and how that's influenced the process. It basically works by providing an impetus for the children, like something for them to react to. Instead of going with a set formula, it's a more fluid process. So we provide something for the children to react to. Once they're reacting to it, we sort of encourage them and support them to go down whatever direction they're going down. And then if it stalls completely, then we might add something new into the mix. But it's not in terms of a class where we would sit down and say, this is the objective, this is how we're going to achieve it. It's much more organic than that. And that really has sort of, I mean, that's the start of the show, of the Big Bounce show. Because and it kind of, you can really see that in the processes, because we've ended up with a kind of quite a non-linear and abstract show that's sort of, it doesn't have that talking narrative. It doesn't have that kind of direct, this is what we're doing, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy, this is the culmination, which is great because it's really gotten through to when we did the dress rehearsal the other day. The 4-year-olds, which it's aimed at around that age group, react really well to that, because I think at their age they don't have such that they think in abstract terms anyway. So it's really worked well, and On a personal level, what I've most enjoyed about this is making a kids show that really relates to them. I think on their level, I really enjoy doing that. You know, it's not children's shows isn't what I normally do, and the few times I've had to work with kids in the past, I've kind of been directed to treat them not so much as children's, but as if they don't understand anything, and I don't think that's true. I think they just have their own way of doing it. So it's been really good to make a show for kids that talks to them as sort of equals, and seems to make a show that comes from somewhere that they would understand, and it's been really great to have the test audience and see that hit the mark. I think that was pretty satisfying. And just playing around with a load of bouncing balls, it's always good to just jump around on bouncing balls when you're 35 years old and get paid for it, you know, that's pretty good.
The collaboration between BSO and the Big Bounce came about. Jenny wanted a musician who could basically accompany the Big Bounce. Whatever happened, they had to be able to write music, they had to be able to respond to the various performers, they had to be used to, I think, working in a theatrical environment. And Jenny approached the BSO, and as I'm the BSO's community musician, they asked me if I'd like to do it, and I really jumped at the opportunity because it's a great opportunity. On a professional level, creating music for an early years performance, it's actually been very, very difficult because it's one has to always think about how to keep the music as simple as possible. We as musicians are so used to playing difficult music and trying to make music, quite complicated music, simple, but it's actually quite hard to come up with a simple music in the first place, and I've found that the simpler the better it works, particularly when young people are involved, and this is no exception. It's been very interesting coming up with that simple material. We went the 5x5x5 process. We went off to work in a preschool and tried out, experimented lots and lots and lots with the children, allowing them to experience, to experiment, to try out things. Alongside us, we were just as learning just as much from the whole experience. We were learning from them, they were learning from us. It was a fascinating experience. I found working with the Big Bounce team absolutely fantastic. It's really interesting, this marriage between music, between circus skills with acrobats, with tumblers, and also working with a theatre director as well. Somehow we have to push these three things together without anything written down on a page.
So we've been using an approach that I learned from an organisation called 5x5x5 equals creativity. The process that we have based Big Bounce on is a very child-centred process, so trying to get underneath children's ideas and see what they might be interested in exploring, and then going in that direction and helping and facilitate them to take their idea as far as possible. So we did quite a few sessions in preschools and nursery schools to find out what the children enjoyed with playing with all the different sizes of balls and all of the imaginative play that came with that, as well as the physical play. I think the most challenging part of this process has been that we've had a very short time scale, and because we're working outdoors, we've had to go with the weather, which has limited our time on the project. So we've had to work incredibly quickly, and we've had very, very many ideas. So I think that's been quite hard to bring the piece down to kind of 35 minutes, when actually we would easily have enough ideas for an hour. And that editing down process does take time, so yeah, that's been the most challenging aspect, I would say. I think the nicest thing about this process has been the team that we've got. Dream team. We've had a lot of fun. Everybody's been incredibly open to trying different ideas. The piece is very abstract actually in its final form, and I think everybody's been really willing to try things even though we perhaps not have understood them fully ourselves at the time. And we've had great fun. Lots of splatfalls and falling over and just having a good old giggle at the same time as working hard. And also we've had an amazing rehearsal space here at Watercleaves Nursery, where we've been able to have a private space outside with also an amazing polytunnel to go into when it's been cold and rainy, to warm up and be able to spend time chatting together about what we just did. So that's been terrific.
What did you think about the show? What would you say to me?
Brilliant.
What was the best bit?
People going in the balls.
What, in the clear ones?
Yeah, the clear ones.
What about the bouncing? Did you like that?
Yeah.
Did you have a go at bouncing afterwards?
Yeah.
Yeah? What did you think of the show?
Amazing, yeah, really good. It's kind of great for the kids to just kind of have some freedom and really good.
What did you think your children got out of it?
Just a kind of chance to be free and just explore, and it's kind of a real safe environment and just let themselves go. We kind of restrict our kids a lot these days, and it's nice to just let them have the freedom.
I like the show because there were light colours and they were good actors.
Yeah, it was very unusual, and I think it really entertained the children, and the fact they can participate after is very good, I think, yeah.
I had a great time.
Wow.